Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. I'm Adam Bonini, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Sal Mayorana, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. And with us from suburban Boston today, Christopher Price, a longtime on the Patriots beat for the Boston Globe and co-host of the Patriots Report, along with former Bills and Patriots receiver Chris Hogan. Chris, nice to have you with us today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's my pleasure to be here. And my podcast partner, Chris Hogan, wants to send his regards as well. He has nothing but good things to say about his time in upstate New York.
Yeah, we both covered him. Class act.
Exactly. All the way.
I enjoyed Hogs. He was a lacrosse player, as you know, and I'm a big lacrosse guy here in Rochester. Covered a lot of pro and college lacrosse, so we always talked about lacrosse. I swear I came across him too at some point in his college career. But I remember in fact, he played. Didn't he play or try to play in the pro league?
Yeah.
Did he play before or after with football?
After his football career, he picked up. I think he played for like a year or so in the professional lacrosse league now. But he's playing the role of Mr. Mom to 4 kids who I think are all under the age of 12, and he's doing school drop off and pickup and. It's quite a difference from his life in the National Football League.
Nice. No doubt about that. And before we should probably quickly get into this matchup, Bills Patriots Sunday night in Orchard Park, because Sal, he's got like the MLB playoffs on. You got Red Sox Yankees tonight at 8:00. As you know, Sal has a kind of not even really an alter ego, but quite the personality on X. In terms of he's got his Yankees newsletter and everything. So he's got one eye on the baseball playoffs and one eye on believing.
No, I have 2 eyes on the baseball playoffs, Adam, not just one. There'll be 2 full eyes, including a lot of swear words probably tonight too. But anyways, let's go.
That's right. That would be the norm for you. Okay. All right, Chris, we'll start with you. And I guess the kind of the wide angle on this is Mike Vrabel, the influence, the Patriots with a nice bounce-back win over Carolina, 42-13, a blowout in that game. 2-2 record. Where do things stand with them? And I think most of us have kind of, identified them as the team that's likely to ultimately rise up and challenge Buffalo in terms of the reign atop the AFC East. Whether that happens this year or not remains to be seen. But I would ask you, being on that beat, how close are they to beginning to kind of achieve that status?
They're definitely miles ahead of where they were at this point last year. I'll put it that way. This team is a functional, professional operation as opposed to where they were, early in 2023 and 2022. Even I'll go back that far as well. Vrabel has got a lot of that locker room to buy in instantaneously. I talked to a handful of guys who signed there as free agents, including Milton Williams. And I asked the primary question was, why do you want to come to a team that's 4-13? And look, other than Williams' case, it was about money, but you also, you see Vrabel as a draw. Those guys saw the opportunity to play for someone like Mike Vrabel and help create a foundation that, at least theoretically, leads to something bigger and better down the road. So the guys that he brought in, the guys that a lot of the guys who played for him in Tennessee, Jack Gibbons, Robert Spillane, Harold Landry, they've done a lot to help infuse a new culture in New England. I'm not saying that they're going to make the playoffs this year. I've been kind of tempered my expectations a little bit here with this team, but they've got the thing turned around, and it's going to take a couple of years, but I wouldn't be surprised that by the end of 2026, these guys are a legit challenger to Buffalo when it comes to the AFC East.
I don't know, Chris. I think it could happen this year. I mean, I think the Bills are clearly the best team in the division, but I've already talked to Adam. I was on radio today. I said it. I'm picking the Bills to win the game, but it is not going to surprise me if New England walks out of here winning the game. I like what they're doing, like you just laid it out for us. The one thing I will ask you about the team this year, though, is this is obviously their first legit test, because I don't care what the Steelers are not that good. There's no way the Patriots should have lost the game. Quite frankly, I'm not quite sure how you're not 4-0, because I don't know how you found a way to lose to Geno Smith either. But I guess the question would be, I really like what they're doing there, but in this first big game against the first really good team they're going to face, do you think they are up to that challenge?
No, No, I think that they're going to challenge them, but I think, look, up and down the roster, I think Buffalo's just just has too much. When you stack the rosters against each other, I think they're going to be able to keep it competitive. I know that FanDuel, I think the line has it at 8.5.
8.5.
This point. Yep. Yeah, and I think that's a lot, even for this sort of matchup, this sort of divisional matchup. The Patriots are looking at this game as a real measuring stick for them, Sal. And I'm glad you bring up the first 4 games, because we don't really know what the Patriots are yet. If the Patriots come out on Sunday night and they're competitive, then I think that set the level of expectation for this team for the rest of 2025. Because as you said, this is their first real opportunity to go up against a legit playoff team. I'm not sold on the Raiders. I'm not sold on the Steelers. And look, the Panthers are the Panthers. They did play well from start to finish against the Dolphins, and they got their first win in Miami since 2019. So I think that's certainly a point in their favor. But look, the way they play in this game is going to set the level of expectation and really, I think, shape the legacy of this team for the rest of the season. Because you look at this game for them specifically, just kind of in a vacuum, this game is going to be a battle, or should be a battle. The next 6 games, I think it is, are against teams with a combined record of 4-18. I mean, there's a lot of Tennessee, Cleveland, the Jets are in there as well. So, you could find yourself, if you're a Patriots fan, even if you lose this thing, you could find yourself at mid-season looking at a 500 record. And considering where they were at this point last year, again, that's just a quantum leap ahead of where they were. Again, I'm not going to say that they're a playoff team going into November and December, but there's certainly a chance for them to use this game as a jumping off point to continue that big time turnaround.
And that was kind of what I was getting to, is that, if they were to win this game, all of a sudden, the Bills could have a 3-game lead in the division against everybody if they win. If they lose, all of a sudden it's a 1-game lead on the Patriots. They have the tiebreaker, and you just laid it out. They've got a schedule that is very manageable. Now, the Bills don't exactly have it, many heavyweights either. They've got Atlanta, Carolina after this, and then it gets a little bit tougher. Kansas City comes to town, Houston. But man, the Patriots, if they win this game, they could really situate themselves in this race for much longer than I think a lot of people in Boston probably figured.
Yeah, and the other thing too that's important to kind of consider when you talk about the first 4 games of the year, or at least the first 3 games of the year, they didn't have their best defensive player, Christian Gonzalez, and Gonzalez did not play wire to wire in the 4th game of the year against the Panthers. Look, he didn't have to, quite frankly, but I think a lot of it was about kind of him getting ramped up and him getting back to 100%. So again, for me, it's all about realistic expectations for this team. And you get Gonzalez back. Hell, I got an email the other day for the first time in like 3 years thinking, oh, how are the Patriots going to approach the trade deadline? They're going to go after a coverage linebacker, And so I think that the fan base here really is just kind of getting used to winning again and being relevant again. And I think they would be, I don't want to say they'd be okay with a winning record, like a 9-8 finish or something, as long as they are cresting toward the end of the year. I can draw a lot of parallels between this team, I think, and the 1993 team that Bill Parcells had. That 93 team lost like 10 of their first 11 games, but they won their next 4. They were a pain in the ass to play against down the stretch. They ended up going to the playoffs the next year. This team feels a little bit like that. There are a lot of people up here who are trying to draw parallels between Belichick and Vrabel. I think Vrabel is a lot more like Parcells in his approach, his attitude, the way he kind of gives the needle to some of his players, the way he goes about building the roster. So look, I think that there's a chance after those, this game, because again, like you said, they build out the rest of that schedule. There's a lot of winnable games in there. But again, I think that they're learning how not to lose as opposed to learning how to win at this stage of their development.
You talked about, laying the foundation and getting things turned around. That involves a franchise quarterback, right? Obviously. So I want to ask you about Drake May. And Sal and I spent a good deal of time talking about him last year on this show and ahead of this game as well. And one of the things that impressed us about him is, given the utter lack of talent on that roster, what they had around him, kind of the way he handled it, his attitude, all of those things, we were impressed by that. And then obviously his talent, what he brings to the game. If Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes represent sort of the new age of quarterback in the National Football League, with all that mobility and athleticism, and in Allen's case, his size and strength as well, May has a lot of those characteristics, right? Where is he at in terms of evolving his game now?
He's certainly taken it to the next level, I think, for a couple of different reasons this year. I think, first of all, his offensive strengths as a signal caller really fit Josh McDaniels' offense better than the system he was in last year with Alex Van Pelt. And then the other thing, too, for me, and this is kind of something that we've seen develop over the course of the spring and the summer and into the regular season, his pocket presence is years ahead of where it was, at this point in 2024. He's able to kind of sense pressure and move accordingly. There were times last year, and part of it was because the offensive line was so bad that when a play broke down, he just would take off like a scalded dog. And now he's moving in the pocket. He's kind of adjusting, looking through, kind of going through his reads. The pass that he made to Ramondre Stevenson against Miami, that was really one of the best completions he's had of his professional career, that came as a result of hanging in the pocket and kind of adjusting and moving back and forth and kind of figuring out what the defense was offering him. I'm not saying he's approaching Brady status. I want to make really, kind of include this condition before I make this statement, but his pocket presence is starting to remind me of Brady in that a lot of times Tom Brady was his own best offensive lineman. He was able to kind of move in the pocket and kind of figure out what was going on. May is starting to do that more and more. I'm not saying he's doing that 100% of the time because he still takes some bad sacks sometimes, but he's taking care of himself. He's not running into injury like he was a lot of times last year. He's learning how to slide. He's learning how to bail out kind of on the backside. They're moving the pocket. They're getting him in really on the move. Bootlegs, that kind of stuff. And he's really starting to flourish with that too. And then there's just the natural progression going from one year to another. He's kind of, he's got a whole year under his belt and he kind of has a much better handle on what to really kind of figure out what the league is going to, throw his way. So the game is starting to slow down for him, but there are those little intangibles that he's kind of picking up on along the way that are helping his game.
Now, look, Stefon Diggs is not the same player that he was when he came here in 2020, but you can draw a couple parallels. I mean, he came here, it was Allen's third season. Obviously, it's only the second season for May, but Allen became a superstar in part because of Stefon Diggs. There's no doubt he had a huge role in what Allen did in the 4 years they were together. I don't know, again, because he is an older player coming off a knee injury, but have you seen Diggs have some kind of impact or positive impact on May? And not just because he's caught whatever team leading passes and yardage totals, but is he having an impact similar to maybe the way we saw the impact he had with Josh Allen?
Yeah, and look, that's one of the predominant storylines going into this game, that Diggs helped May go from here to here kind of professionally. And can he do the same thing with Drake? Is Drake on that same parallel path with the help of a guy like Diggs? Diggs is not what he was in Buffalo physically, but I think he's added a couple of layers to his game. I think he's a very smart receiver, and a lot of the guys on the offense have talked about this, that he's able to make up for what he lost in speed. He's able to make up for in smarts and just general game awareness. He had his first 100-plus yard game as a member of the Patriots last week against Carolina. Again, look, that's Carolina, so you take it with a grain of salt. But at the same time, it's a milestone for him on the way back after the ACL injury he suffered last year. He wants to be able to continue to progress in the right direction. He's on pace, at least right now, even after a relatively slow start, first couple of games, to still hit 1,000 yards. And the Patriots haven't had 1,000-yard receivers since Julian Edelman did it, I think, 6 years ago. So we're starting to see that more and more. We're starting to see him emerge more and more as a guy who May trusts, May likes, and May wants to really kind of build a connection with. I don't think they're there yet, but I think he's starting to emerge more and more as that guy. We've seen him pick up a couple of catches on fourth down earlier this year. He's really also, and I think this might kind of, surprise some people in Buffalo, he's really emerged as a leader on this team, on this relatively young roster. I talked to Garrett Bradbury, who played with him in Minnesota, and he's like, yeah, look, Steph has always had it in him. And I think now that he's a little bit older and he's had a little more time in the league, he's kind of started to kind of, emerge more and more. He talked to the entire team before the last two games. He had a huddle, a pregame huddle, and the entire team was around him. So look, he's not going to be the overwhelming offensive presence. He's not going to catch 120 balls, but I think he right now is certainly doing more than his share of helping get Drake May from, one stage of his career to the next stage of his career.
You're getting the, it's the honeymoon phase right now.
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
right.
It's funny. Can I say that? No. I did a whole piece on him for the Boston Globe back in May. And one of the things that a former teammate told me, they said the shelf life on Stef is about 1.5 years before it kind of starts to turn.
Yep.
And so I am Adam. I am completely aware of the fact that it's still very much in the lovey-dovey phase right now with him, that, he's talking to us on Wednesday and then he's talking after the games and he's saying all the right things and he's being a great teammate. Look, I'm fully aware of the fact that it could turn, man, like that if they lose 4 in a row in November and he's not getting any touches. So we're still in the honeymoon phase. I completely understand that.
Yeah. And look, I have a lot of respect for, I had a pretty good relationship with him. I won't speak for Sal, but it was tense at times.
When I got to talk to him, which wasn't a lot. We didn't get him a lot.
Actually, when we were able to talk to him or you approach him at his locker away from everything, we would have great conversations.
Yeah.
And I don't want to turn this into the media relationship with Stefan because the audience doesn't care about that. I'm just saying he's an interesting personality.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I guess that's why I bring this up to illustrate it. But yeah, there is a maturation factor. There's the perspective of coming off the injury that he is. And again, he's their leading receiver right now.
Yeah.
How are they using him? I guess, he had begun to lose a step, Chris, when he was here.
Yeah.
Which led to some of the tension and the issues surrounding his departure. I've seen a lot of him out of the slot. Is that the case?
Yeah, they've used him in the slot a little bit. Pop Douglas has kind of struggled over the first 4 games when it comes to building a connection with Drake this year. He had some good numbers last year, but for whatever reason, maybe it's a Josh McDaniels offense, he's not picking up on some of the nuances. He's kind of phased out over the last couple of games. They've used him in the slot. They've used him on the boundary. I always use the barometer, like when we're out there at practice and, over the spring and the summer, that he never looked out of place. I'll say that when it came to his overall role in the offense. I'll tell you guys a story. They got the year they had Chad Ochocinco. And then the following spring, he was back in camp and kind of working with the team. And there were moments where Deion Branch literally had to go over to him, grab him by the shoulder pads and kind of move him over here. We've never had one of those moments with Diggs. He's been assiduous in his study. He's worked with a lot of these younger guys, these younger receivers. But I guess ultimately, to answer your question, he is a guy right now who is kind of wearing multiple hats. They do have him in the slot. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the slot a little bit on Sunday night. Again, I think that's kind of in concert with, what they might end up doing with Pop Douglas. I like Pop a lot, but there seems to be some sort of misconnection there with the Josh McDaniels offense. And Josh talked about it today. McDaniels talked a little bit about it today, that he's been good about learning everywhere he needs to be on the field, because a big thing for a receiver in the Josh McDaniels offense, and look, Hogan and I have talked about this on a number of occasions, that receivers have to know everything, the entire playbook, because you're moved in the slot, you're moved outside. Sometimes you line up in the backfield and you got to figure that out as well. So it's a lot, and they're still trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, even after all this time, because again, it's kind of a multi-layered approach here with this offense. So I think they're in the right, they've headed in the right direction. Diggs has been nothing but, positive. And again, I know the shelf life is finite with him. But it's been good so far, and he's been versatile, and he's been a good teammate by all accounts.
So I think there's going to be some points scored in this game, because Adam and I will tell you, we don't trust this Buffalo defense at all. I mean, they're terrible against the run. They may be number 1 in the pass defense rankings and yards per game allowed, but man, you don't get that feeling when you're watching them play. They've played 3 lousy, I wouldn't call 2 a lousy, but they played, Spencer Rattler this week. They had Justin Fields in week 2. So I am curious to see this New England defense. Buffalo is going to give up points in this game. People might not believe it, but they're going to give up points. Can the Bills score enough points? They've scored 30 per game so far. Are they going to have enough points to score against this New England defense? Because I like some of the things New England's doing on defense.
The problem with the New England defense is the second level, the linebackers. They don't have a lot of depth, and they've missed some tackles earlier in the year. And look, I think part of it is because they played 2 of the fastest offenses on the planet, Miami and Las Vegas. And so Robert Spillane and Jack Gibbons, those guys were kind of a step behind more often than they'd probably like to be. If you're Buffalo, that's where you're going. You're getting the ball out quickly, and you're finding those mismatches at the second level. I think that they've also kind of struggled to get some consistency at the safety position this year. They let go of Jabril Peppers right before the start of the season. Kyle Duggar's not the same defender that he was earlier in his career. They have Jalen Hawkins, who I think has played okay, and they also have a rookie, Craig Woodson, who's played okay. But there are some soft spots in that New England defense. Look, getting Christian Gonzalez back can camouflage a lot of those deficiencies, because you can play a lot of man coverage and then you bump everyone else kind of down the depth chart. Carlton Davis goes back to being a number 2. Marcus Jones goes back to being in the slot, and so on and so forth. But there are some gains to be made. If I'm the Buffalo offense, when it comes to those matchups, when it comes to getting to that second level, because they don't have a coverage linebacker. I think Marte Mapu has done very well, but he's certainly not the kind of guy who can consistently run with tight ends. You can't have him on the field really in running situations, because, James Cook, they're just going to run right at him. If you're Buffalo, you're going to run right at him. So I think if you're the Patriots, you want to play really good complementary football. Look, that's the case every single week, but you have to be able to put together some sustained drives and do what you can do to keep Josh Allen off the field. And whether that's kind of a short, intermediate passing game or leaning on Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, Trevion Henderson to really control the game, to really put your imprint on this thing. If this thing gets into the 30s, the Patriots aren't going to have a chance. They're not going to win a shootout with Buffalo. They just don't have the offensive firepower to win a shootout with Buffalo. If New England wins this thing, they're going to shrink the game down. They're going to put together some long, sustained drives, and they need to get some special teams magic. That's one of the areas where the Patriots have a real distinct advantage going into this game with their returners. Marcus Jones almost had two punt returns. He had 1 punt return. He almost had 2 last week against the Panthers. Trevion Henderson took one all the way back in the preseason. Antonio Gibson ran one all the way back, against Miami. So they have some special returners. They really do. They have a great group, and I think they're going to have to play a big role on Sunday night if New England wants to pull this thing off.
Yeah, Sal wrote about that in the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle this week. Special teams they're kind of uniquely qualified in terms of having some additional weaponry there on special teams, especially as it pertains to this matchup and sort of the dynamic as it plays out. I would ask you finally here as we wrap this up about your impressions of Buffalo, what they've built, the process, what's happened there. Allen, particularly last year and now this year, taking what the defense gives him. We talked about Drake May and the maturation over the course of the offseason into this year now, but it took Allen a little bit of time, right? But the level he's at, I mean, he's obviously the reigning MVP and still as efficient. And he just had his first interception last week, not turning the football over, doing all of those things. And the way they've built this roster, what are your impressions of this quarterback and where Buffalo stands right now in terms of not obviously the division, but being a true Super Bowl favorite at this point, according to FanDuel and others?
Well, I'll start with this. I picked the Bills to win the Super Bowl. So I'm all in. I love the way they built their team. I love the way that, look, and it started for me last year, before the start of the year last year, where they had stones to trade Diggs away, their number 1 wide receiver. I thought that took great guts, but it benefited them. It was, the old addition by subtraction kind of thing. And look, setting aside Diggs' history and him ending up here in New England is a whole nother thing. But I love the way Buffalo has gone about the process. It was a patient, it took a long time. And look, the narrative has flipped here. I remember coming on Buffalo radio for years and them asking, well, are the Bills ever going to beat New England? And now look, it's the other way around. Are the Patriots ever going to find a way to upend the Bills? So I have a lot of respect for the way they built their team. I have a lot of respect for the way that they went about their process. It was a patient process. There was a team building approach that, took a while, and they stuck with it, and they had a vision. McDermott being the rest of the franchise had a clear vision, and the way that they've been able to execute it, I think, has been fantastic. They've just had, and it's like when I always talk about the Tennessee Titans of the early days of the 21st century, they just had the bad fortune to be really good at the worst possible time because they were banging their head on the ceiling against either the Rams or the Patriots. The Bills have had the bad fortune the last couple of years to be really good at the worst possible time because they kept running into, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or whoever the case is. I think they have, if they can stay healthy, the kind of roster that can get them over the top this year. And again, like you guys said, we've talked about this, before. It's all about the quarterback, and they have the guy who's been there, and they have the guy who is not only, the statistical, he has all the measurables, the size, speed, arm strength, all that. He's matured. You can see this from the outside, talking to everybody the other day. He's matured when it comes to taking care of the football, when it comes to growing as a leader. This is a guy who has got his, what together. And it looks like the window is there for the Bills this year, especially when you consider the first, 4 weeks of the season, when we've seen what's happened to Kansas City and Baltimore and some of those traditional AFC powers that kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. And so you look at the way things are starting to kind of open up here for Buffalo. I think they have a great opportunity moving forward.
All right, Sal, any last
argue.
thought from you? Sal, real quick.
No,
before you,
I am good. Chris laid it out. I picked the stupid Ravens to win the Super Bowl, so it shows you what I know.
And hey, by the way, I am incredibly psyched about coming to Buffalo and coming to Highmark Stadium, because that is one of my single favorite places in the league. I love the retro feel to the thing, man. It's just straight out of like 1983. I'm not surprised there's a fax machine in the press box and just all of it. I love that aspect about covering games in Buffalo. I'm super psyched about it. And I tell as many young reporters as I can, just get to Highmark. The last couple of years, I have to get to Highmark Stadium because it's fantastic. It's a great place to see it.
It is. It's a great stadium. We've loved it here for 53 years. I've been to maybe more games than any reporter in the history of the team at this point. Over 400 I've been there for. So I'm going to miss it a lot. I'm looking forward to going across the street. It'll be interesting. But I am gonna miss the point. I hate the view that we have now, Chris.
Yes.
Since they moved the press box, it is one of the worst views in the NFL because we sit so low. At least at Gillette, we're up high. And we can see the panoramic view.
One of the best things, man. I swear to this is true, and fans don't care about this, but look, the fact that they can turn around and bang on the windows during the game and just it's fantastic. It is. It's a completely unique football experience, right down to the one finger salute that the opposing team's bus gets on the way into the parking lot. I can't say enough about it. And I just hope that the new stadium there retains a little bit of that same character.
Yeah, I would agree.
Bring wacky people going to the game, so it probably will.
They built that thing in 73, right? And I forget, being originally from the New England area, when the old Foxborough Stadium was that they were kind of built at the same time. They did such a much better job in Orchard Park.
Yes.
Then, that old Foxborough Stadium was bad by college standards.
You had so many people show up, so many draft picks show up in Foxborough to old Foxborough Stadium and say, "This is like my high school place. This is really, this is where we're playing. You sure about this?" They didn't even have, and I don't want to get off on a tangent. They didn't even have a practice bubble there.
Right.
Until the new place. They would have to take a bus. The whole team would have to take a bus and go up to Boston College and use Boston College's practice bubble. How bananas is that?
Crazy.
And now it's,
Well, the NFL, everything's changed.
Exactly.
Obviously, which is the reason the new Highmark Stadium's going up across the street, because if you want to keep a team, you have to have something like that. But anyway, we could do a whole separate show on that. We're going to wrap this one up. Christopher Price of the Boston Globe, covering the New England Patriots, and the Patriots Report here on the Believe Network with he and former Bills Patriots receiver Chris Hogan. Check that out. Christopher, thanks for your time. We appreciate it today.
My pleasure, guys. Take care. Talk soon.
All right. So for Sal Mayorana, Chris Price, I am Adam Benini of WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Bills and Patriots Sunday Night Football from Orchard Park. Thanks for being with us here on Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel.